Let's get started. Sometimes these are the most fun for me because I don't know where the conversation will go. We have some type of structure, but it's always fun. One of the things that uh, has been on my mind and talking to people is just engagement levels. Like people are now worried about like being laid off, like their company switching back to maybe more waterfall ways of doing things, like getting, uh, questioning agile ways of working. So my question to you guys, the panelists here, is what are you seeing? What have you been observing as far as engagement levels, as far as what's going on currently in organizations? And do you see any concerns? What's your take on it? So let's start with
Oh,
maybe. We'll, or maybe, sorry, Erica, to call you on. It's just
That's
Matthias
perfectly
was
fine.
ready. Matthias was ready to jump in.
This is the fun part for you. This is the nerve-wracking part for us. I thought
It is.
I thought I'd take a leap of faith and just join the panel instead of doing a presentation just to be on the spot. Awesome on a Thursday, on a Tuesday evening. No, but I think you're right. Organizations, especially I think since COVID, since war, since energy crisis, have taken a very weird and counterproductive um, response to change and to being confronted with change. So we either see them sticking their heads in the sand, um, sticking to doing the same thing that they've always been doing, or even worse, go back to old ways of working because, it worked then. So it will continue working for us in the future, which is insane. I think everybody knows that doesn't work. Um, Second option is they just burn down the entire organization. I think Sonia mentioned it as well. They just do a really big bang reorg. They hide somewhere in an ivory tower of the organization, or they go to the Bahamas. Kind of depends how much money there's still left in the bank, I suppose. And they go and redesign what the organizations should look like, and then they enforce it. They push it down to the people, and they just need to comply with that. Or they take really fragmented um, actions upon it, which also very often don't really work. And I think that a lot of people in the organizations kind of feel that these responses um, are all, should I say, they're all going on around them, not including them. While a lot of people within the organization actually kind of feel, because they're more closer to the work, they're very often more closer to the customers, they kind of feel and sense much better what could be beneficial to the organization, what could help, what could work. But they're very often not listened to. They're completely ignored. And when they come up with ideas, it indeed scares the hell out of the people in leadership or guiding the organizations, because they're like, whoa, you come with these ideas, but there is no strategic plan behind it. We haven't envisioned this for in our 2, 3, or 5 year plan. So how should we now suddenly deal with this? Organizations are very rigid in structures and not really capable of dealing or responding to ideas that emerge just spontaneously from the people in those organizations who are directly confronted with the changes in the market, with the changes that are requested by customers or by fellow colleagues, or the impact that new technology, for example, has on them. They feel it, they sense it, they want to voice what is needed there. And there is very often no structure in the organization to deal with that feedback that comes from the people, which is, I think, one of the reasons why if organizations want to become more able to deal with change, want to become more adaptive, one of the first things is to start thinking about how can we create space for everyone in the organization to start voicing when they feel that change is needed, and also propose and try to even solve how an organization could deal with those things. So I think that I would like to advocate for people to be louder, to speak up more. I think if everyone starts doing that, it's going to be difficult to fire everyone.
It is. It reminds me of like a crazy experience where I had with somebody told me like Milan, they have to referring to leadership, stop treating us like mushrooms. And I didn't know what that means. And I was like, I asked like, what does that really mean? And she's like, well, they keep us in the dark and feed us shit all the time. And I think that's how a lot of people feel. Like, they're being asked for feedback. They provide feedback, but a lot of times it's like they're not really in the loop. Yeah. Al,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, I know the numbers, like in companies. I think it's even worse in the US than it is in Europe. Like, yeah, most people actually are very disengaged at work. And that is scary. I often hear that term work-life balance. And I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like that term, not because I'm a workaholic, but because I think it's a false dichotomy. It's not, if you think that work is the opposite of life, then there's clearly a problem. And for some people, work might be actually as bad, but we should find ways to kind of live at work as well. And I also think this false dichotomy is what drives many management decisions, when it's the thinking either you kind of care for your employees, you do something, you make it, yeah, you help them engage, you make it nicer for them, or you save money and boost productivity. Like it's either one or the other. But that's not true. it's actually that the two reinforce each other. It's in my talks, in my agile talks, I often use the example of musicians. Like music, when they stand in front of thousands of people, we would break out in sweat if most of us think about that. Standing on a stage in front of thousands of people, 10,000s of people, and then you have to perform. And you have to repeatedly perform. And you do not know the notes you play. You just have to come up with the notes right at that moment. Musicians call that improvising. And then musicians, when you look at how musicians deliver at that point, is they don't feel stressed. They don't collapse under the stress. They smile like crazy. They have fun. So when you're having fun, when you enjoy what you're doing, this is when you deliver your highest performance. So there is no opposite of, engage people more or save money and increase performance. It supports each other. And I think there is a lot of talk or a lot of mental models that kind of categorize that into opposites. It's either this or that. Yeah. And someone back then wrote something about Buddhism, I think. I don't know much about it, but I think a part of that philosophy is also to not judge. And that would help in these situations. A lot of managers, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I really like what you said. The whole thing about also work-life balance is not just that the fact that you have to balance and put them opposed to each other, but it's a very individualistic thing anyway. What does it mean to you? It's like, I think it has a lot to do with being, following your reasons for being. I think for me, a lot is happening, and I think that we're at a turning point. So I've been in software for 54 years now, and I've been in Agile for 25. Um, and I was doing what could have been called Agile well before that. I just didn't know what I was doing, to be candid. It was a series of one-offs. And when I learned XP, I was like, oh my goodness, I now have a way to structure this. I think what's happened is Agile, up until about now, has been an overreaction to waterfall, has been an overreaction to overprediction, has been an overreaction to bad management, has been an overreaction to a lot of things. And people tend to think that that's the way it is, and it isn't. I haven't had the experience with management that I see all the time on LinkedIn. We had one or two companies that had bad management that we ran into. We had massive success at Net Objectives, I'm talking about, where for 20 years we were doing things at scale from starting around 2006, 2007. We realized Agile had been team centric and we needed to go beyond it. So now what we're seeing, and I agree with what Maria was saying, if you have a framework that's giving you solutions, it's very risky because none of them actually run a diagnostic first. I think that's the most amazing thing there is. We talk about customers telling us how to solve things and we don't like it, and yet so many Agilists say, here, do this framework, do that framework. And there's no diagnostic system in there to tell you how you implement it. That's kind of insane. So what's happening is a backlash to that kind of Agile. There are a lot of good people out there. Most of them are individual consultants I've seen. And there are some good, I don't know, I'd call them frameworks but they're frameworks like physics. You know, I sometimes wonder if I should call Amplio a framework or not. And I finally resigned to calling it that.
I mean, maybe just even just, I think that's another thing that I would love to discuss. Like, what is a framework? Because, like, I think people are bashing frameworks, and I think it's more bashing prescriptive frameworks rather than.
That's
so
right.
Framework, like a combination of patterns that are contextualized, like how.
Well, let me finish this first point for 2 minutes. Sorry, I did get on a roll. And then let me show you another alternative to the frameworks as I've seen. So people are giving up on agile coaches in a lot of ways, and they're now looking to AI. And it's ironic, Sutherland's saying to do this. I mean, and he led us down this path, in my opinion. AI is going to make a huge difference in programming, but there are some risks here. I'm not sure AI is being dealt with properly to keep business architecture. I'm not sure it's maintainable code. I mean, it hasn't been used that long. And from what I hear, it's a great tool to start, but you still have to think, and people are now transferring, oh, I don't have to think. I've learned not thinking in Agile doesn't work, but now I've got AI to tell me, and that'll be the intelligence. That is a bad place to be going down. And last thing, and then I would like to show something if I could share my screen. I'll give you an example, not saying this is what you need to do, but the thing is that I believe the role of the coach has to go up dramatically, where you have to guide. And someone commented on one of my posts, said, well, that sounds good, Al, but it really sounds complicated. And the answer is it's complicated for the coach. They have to learn. You need to spend a few days. You need to putting glue is a lot harder than running a team. You need to do that. And what happens is then everybody else has an easier job. Maria, I'm sure you've seen this, right? When you have a good RTE or a good coach or good glue, everybody else works easier. Your job is tough as hell, but everybody else's job has gotten a lot easier. See, that's what a coach needs to do. And yes, it's a higher bar. So those people who aren't going to be raising the bar for themselves are going to lose their jobs. I've been in programming and business for over 40 years. I mean, I've been in programming since 1971, but I got into business from 1980. And all this time, not once has IT hiring gone down. Not once have we seen this trend. Even leveling off is a massive thing, and it's a shift. So I would like to show one thing, because this is, and I'm not trying to sell my system. I'm trying to give an example of how you can have not a framework.
Yeah.
Or a framework that's
well, I'm interested. Yeah, please share, because I asked Dave Snowden last conference that we had, and I asked him, and he pointed, like, I asked him, like, essentially what he's doing, and he's talking about creating something in between practices and patterns. But let's take a look here, please.
Well, yeah, and he and I fundamentally disagree, but he would never tell me what I was doing wrong. He just said I was, so I disengaged. So here's something I found, and actually I want you all to validate this. So I'm not going to try to explain it. I'm going to tell you the concept. And you look in your own experience. Back around 2007 at Net Objectives, we discovered that most everybody, if you forget a few things, needed to do more or less the same thing, right? Don't you really have to know who you're working for, get some strategies, allocate funds? And I'm trying to make this look more like interactive. The point is that there are capabilities. So here's my question to the group. Have you not seen, and I'm going to make an exception. If you're in a regulated environment or if you're in have hardware involved, then you've got extra things. But more or less, most companies need to attend to these things. This is not a exclusive. There's a lot of commonality between the companies in the objective. These are objectives. Not how do you have strategies, not how do you do planning, but that you have planning, that you have some way of doing it. Does that make sense? I mean, does that meet your own experience is what I mean? Isn't there some commonality that's there? Matthias, you seem doubtful, so I'd like you to speak to that.
No, sure. I'm just thinking hard. I think this is on a level where, yes, every company needs to do that. That's really a common thing on that level.
So the question is, how do you bring all these things together? And one thing you talk about engagement. So Dan Mezek, who's really big in the open network, he and I have started doing some seminars together. And he likes engagement by doing experimentation. I like to do engagement by understanding. And it's both about engagement. Okay, so you can, hey, let's try this, see what happens. Or maybe if you understood why you needed to go small. But maybe if you understood your problem. So what we do is we take that board, we put the stuff up there. Again, don't bother about my board. This is the idea. If these are the things you need to do, maybe talk to your customers, talk to your clients, talk in your company and say, well, what are we not doing? What are our problems? Oh, we can't prioritize. Well, maybe we don't have clarity on our strategy. Maybe we don't have clarity on what we call the strategic pillars, like what we're investing in. Maybe we're working on too many big things. And engage with people and talk to them and create some understanding. Now, this does not mean deterministic. This is the thing that drives me nuts. You cannot plan things out step by step by step by step, but you should know your objectives and you should understand enough about what's happening. This is where I disagree with Snowden. I don't believe there's any such thing as a complex domain. Knowledge work has complexity in it, but it's not all complex. Some of it is simple. Some of it is complicated. Some of it is complex. Some of it is.
He would probably say the same thing. That I don't know if that would be disagreement. He would probably acknowledge that the work has, and that's the whole point of Knaven.
Well, you look at the Knaven picture, and it sure looks like you're in one or the other. So whether
no, I think it's misunderstood.
Well, I go by what's understood, and actually, when I've talked to him about this before years ago, he said I wasn't getting it. So maybe he agrees, disagrees. The point is, I don't care what he's saying. I'm not talking about him, but don't think you've got this or this or this or this in the space. There are some of all.
Correct.
Yeah. And you want to take advantage. You want to take advantage of what you know so you can see these together. See, what complexity means is I might fill this out fully and I can't do that. Why? Because there are things I don't see. Why? Because it's complex. There's complexity there.
Yeah.
So when we talk about engagement, we have to shift from thinking we know everything or thinking we don't know anything to what do we know and how can we discover what we don't know? And to me, that's what engagement needs to be.
I mean, like we can hear from Matthias and
I've said my part there.
Just my quick reaction. I think it reminds me of like a end-to-end value network or value stream, and you're just trying to understand where your bottlenecks are by identifying.
Well, it's a holistic view. I'm not so much worried about the bottlenecks. I'm worried about what objectives am I doing well and which ones am I not doing well.
Well, correct. But I recently read Steve Pereira's book, Flow Engineering, and he talks about like outcome mapping.
I love his work.
Yeah. So anyway, let me so when it comes to collaboration, I guess what I'm seeing here and disengagement, a lot of times people are disengaged because they don't see this big picture. They don't fully embrace complexity. So Erica, Matthias, what are your thoughts on that as far as seeing the big picture, and how much does disengagement and all of this, I guess, how much does lack of understanding of the bigger picture contribute to disengagement and uh, confusion in organization, lack of collaboration, all of that? What are you, based on what Al shared and what I said?
I had something connected to that, and then, or Erica, if you want to answer right away.
Go, Matthias. It's okay.
And I think that also leads to the kind of the disengagement and the big picture. I like how you presented it, Al, that yes, there are certainly commonalities, and this engaging with people is important. For me, it just reminds me of an interview with Peter Senyu that I just saw today. That he said that a big problem with CEOs in companies or management leaders in general is that everyone expects them to have the answers. It doesn't matter if it's a complicated, complex environment, whatever it is. They expect that from themselves. So there's always this this idea that there must be an answer even in a complex world, and that's a lot of pressure. And combined with the cultures that we have in so many organizations, where it's not favorable to be wrong. Or to try something and fail, even if it's not punished right away, but often it's all try to reduce mistakes and errors and wrong things. That's a lot of pressure. And what he said, I found very profound, is we have to be okay with not knowing. And this then ties into the psychological safety that we need to have, like that even leaders can admit, I do not know. Please help me. And if no one knows, we just try to do it. We try to make it work, and it might fail 100 times, and the 101st time might be the success. So this dealing with complexity in a different way, not expecting things to work, not expecting the agile framework. It was built for a complex environment. Now it must work and we must have the answer. No. Be okay with this. Is also, we are human beings. It's messy. We have a bad day. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes ideas fail. There's no bad intention. That's what my kind of underlying theme is, what makes us more agile, is to assume positive intent, API, in everything people do. Assume positive intent, even if it fails, even if it looked like a stupid idea. And then I think it's easier to deal with complexity. And the challenge I see before we do the wonderful stuff, El, that you showed, the engaging and all, and seeing the commonalities in these areas, is to help people overcome their fears of engaging with others, of openly engaging, of admitting, okay, I don't know, can you help me? Or I tried it and I failed, and I tried again and I failed again. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person or I have malicious intent. So and for me, the mindset change that we so often talk about in agility, also in leadership, is not all the agile values and stuff. It's more like that, how we see other human beings when they fail, when they have a bad day, that we think it's not the person, it's just something. Maybe it's just the complexity of the world. Maybe it's just something that got in their way. We sometimes call that impediments, and we have to remove that. But the person wants to do good things. And once that shift happens, at least that's my experience in teams and companies, then suddenly we are on a whole different level.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's making me think about a lot of things. But Erica, what are your thoughts on this?
I think I love the fact that Matthias here points out to being okay with not knowing. Because one of the things that if you're okay with not knowing and you're in a safe space, let's hope, you can be curious. You can be curious to how other people see things and invite other perspectives. But in order for you to be able to do that, to first voice the fact that you don't know, and then secondly, invite other perspectives, is to have an environment that stimulates you to do so. So in all agile conferences and all conversations like this, we often talk about the courage that people have and can also show in how they speak at these conferences, but also how they show up at work. And I think it's very important to support and create the ability for people to be courageous. But I think one thing that is lacking within organizations is the ability to create an environment in which this type of behavior can emerge. So how are we creating organizations in which people can invite different perspectives, where you can have a holistic look on your organization and its problems, because everyone is invited to share their opinions, to share their perspectives. And I think, and it comes back to the nature of complexity. So when we go to school when we are little, um, they have the purpose of trying to teach us what the world is, what life is, what is happening around us. But that's very complex. It's very difficult to teach kids about the world. So what do? We cut everything in small pieces. We say, okay, we have languages, we have religion, we have history, we have maths, and we teach it all separately in separate boxes. But that creates a lot of difficulty further on in life, because life isn't like that. You can't cut it up in pieces. In order to make sense of a lot of complex problems in our society, but also definitely in our organizations, we need to have the ability to connect all these little pieces. But then we go to university and we study one specific topic.
Yeah.
So we again are in a box, and then we take a job in an organization where we get a function title, a seat, and a specific mandate to do certain things. But that's not helping us either, because the organization doesn't create problems in just one specific area of that organization. Problems are usually a sequence of things happening everywhere in the organization, and one thing leads to another. And that's because our organizations are socio-technical systems. And I think I might be stepping on the on the turf of what Zin is going to talk about. But the complex nature of socio-technical systems means that we need to have the ability to take a holistic look at our organizations and tie all those little pieces together. And if we want to do that, we need to always invite in other perspectives, which needs a safe space and an environment that enables us to do so.
So exactly, but this is like I spoke with this with Ian here, and like when I started learning more about adult development and like how we, and if you look at work of Robert Keegan or similar, like in a sense, like most of us are trained to judge, right? So we say like and what Matthias said, like appreciating other perspectives and waiting, but deep down, most of us first judge before we're curious to better understand. And even now, like with frameworks and everything, we're mostly judging rather than being curious. So I don't know, just react to that, I guess. Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, that's a good point. We're also trained to blame.
Yeah.
Mud on the floor. Who tracked this mud in? The biggest irony to me, there are two huge ironies to me about Agile. One is that it's about solutions without seeing what your problem is, although we complain about that. But the other one is it ignores human-centered development. It ignores how people learn, react, are programmed as kids. And one of the things we have endured, most of us anyway, is pedantic learning as a kid, where the teacher knows and you don't, and you ask questions, they have the right answer, and if they ask you a question, it's because you were wrong, and they're trying to nicely tell you why you're wrong. And so we shut down all this, and then you have something like Scrum. It's my biggest peeve: follow to understand. And well, that's very pedantic. And there's something real insidious about it that doesn't seem. Two things. One is it reactivates you automatically. Like, I want to run a little experiment here. So just take a couple of seconds, calm, take a deep breath. You're wrong. Why did you do that? Okay. Now notice how your body reacted to me yelling at you. You didn't think about, like, why is Alan yelling at me? Maybe I should get mad here. Maybe I ought to respond back. You immediately react to that tone I gave you. Now, I'm particularly good at tone. It's a family joke in my house. But you get what I'm saying. This is automatic. This is called being a human being. This is, yes, you can do something about, and good coaches learn, you get the reaction, but you don't act out of the reaction. But most people don't have that ability. So we need to recognize that people listen, react, and think a different way. That's why I love this question. You know, how do we create the environment to foster engagement? And it's not just safety. Like, people talk about safe environments. The most dangerous, unsafe place there is not the space you're in, it's the space between your ears. Because if you don't know something, you start judging yourself. Oh, I was supposed to know that. And if you think you don't know, this is maybe more of a Western phenomenon than a world phenomenon, but definitely in the United States, is that I value myself a lot based on what I know. And we've been trained that also with judging. We judge ourselves more harshly than anybody else. So if you expose to somebody they don't know something, you have just told them they're not worth shit. Not really said that, but that's what gets you vote. And that's why I say this is one of the biggest of the two things in Agile that just, I shake my head whenever I think about it. Agile is supposed to be about people, but we forgot how people react. In fact, most people never acknowledge how people react. It's follow this, do this, don't take this out. That's just not productive.
Yeah, I think one thing that triggered me is when somebody also wrote it that we are judged from the moment that we exit the crib or something. I think it is true. We are taught to judge because, and I think within organizations it's the same, and maybe that is one of the reasons why we have the tendency to find solutions in things which only give us a false sense of control, is because we try all to live up to that norm. You know, everything that is not the norm is to be judged, while actually all innovation, all new things, all inspiration, all creativity comes from things which are not the norm. And still, we try to stick to that norm. At school as well, they say children bully each other, but it comes because they see somebody who's not the norm. I think we should teach kids and teach people in the organization that not living up to that norm is extremely exciting. It's inspiring. Be curious about why people are not that norm, because also that norm doesn't exist. I don't think that anyone is the norm. I want to see the person who's the norm. I've never seen them, never met them. But it's a peculiar thing that everyone tries to be like this balanced, person that doesn't really, or organization that doesn't really do anything too kooky, because then, what could happen? Well, actually, it's there where everything happens.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm just reminded of a conversation I had with a psychologist friend last week, where he talked about, like, we were raised as kids to kind of be the norm, to kind of like conform to whatever is around us, to not stick out. And he said, at least, I mean, he's from Germany, I'm from Germany, so maybe that's a very myopic view. But he said maybe that has to do with kind of how our parents got raised because of their parents, because they lived through kind of the big world wars, and there was an incentive to not stick out. So it actually, it was for survival. And so maybe that's where they got it from their parents and passed it on to us. That would only explain it for kind of the generations that were involved in that. Maybe, and as you say, that there is no norm. Which norm do you want to conform to? The 1.2 kids that every family has? That would be a slaughter. So, yeah, the norm is just an illusion, like so many things. And we measure ourselves against it. And I think, Al, you said it, like we are our most mean judge. We treat ourselves often worse than we would treat any other person outside. And sometimes it helps. I learned a psychological trick. At least it works for me sometimes. It makes me smile. Is that when that kind of that voice in your head goes on that tells you, oh, I messed up, I should have prepared better, that was my mistake. Try to phrase it as you, like talking, you messed up, that was your mistake. Immediately I recoil and stop talking like that, because I would never talk to someone else like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been learning something. I have a life coach, and one of the big things I've learned recently, she's been trying to get me to get this for years, and it finally got through. Whenever I'm in that judgment or feeling all this negative energy, it's usually part of my maybe 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old teenager, whatever, trying to tell me something that bothered me back then that I'm still carrying around. And that's where a lot of the judgment comes from.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed to have a wonderful wife that, I mean, all her friends say that they want me as their husband. I am wonderful. Of course, she loves me. So I'm very happy, very happy. But my life coach says, Al, you need to love yourself the way you love her. And I found that useful. So sometimes the thing to do is to realize, what do I love? Who do I love? And then start loving yourself like that person. Because you are worthy. And I think this is the choice. Yeah, that's great, Jelena. Be gentle to our inner child. I think this is where people have to make a decision. I've been in software since, like I said, since 1970 when I first went to school, college. And I've been all over the place. I've done scientific research. I went to MIT, did a whole bunch of new age stuff there. And I mean, cutting edge, and been in business for a long time. And I have seen over this time, maybe 2 or 3 shifts, okay, of any magnitude. I mean, major ones. There's been a lot. Agile was the last one. There have been others, but we are at the biggest one I've seen in my career. And I talk to other people. I know, like Tom Gilby's a good friend of mine. And there was a shift before I got involved, that I got from Jerry Weinberg. But we are on the edge of probably the biggest shift in business than we've ever been. And you're going to be scared either way. It's scary to step out into something new. There's no question it's scary to step out into something new. The fact that it's scary doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It means you have to be careful. You have to look at things. It's safer, quote unquote, to stay where you are, but the world is shifting.
Yeah, we love like hell we know. That was a quote, right, from the first talk.
No, that's true. It's so much more comfortable sometimes to stay with the hell you know. But I like somebody quoted Ayn Rand to me. She said, you can ignore reality, but reality is not going to ignore you. And here's the good news. I'm going to suggest this is the good news.
So it goes, I guess I keep going back, Al, to what you said, in the sense that as, there are a lot of agile coaches or agile practitioners, we have to step up the game and as
exactly.
Practitioners, this is why I bring up understanding humans and understanding complexity and being able to embrace it and contextualize it is so important. And probably that shift that you're talking about is that, in my opinion, that we've been just trying to fake it and trying to apply a lot of this within the current confines of the structure of the world and organizations. But in order to really help organizations, we're going to have to understand and mimic it or align it to what Sonia said with like living systems rather than, like mechanical representation of organizations that we've seen for the last. So yeah.
I like to emphasize what Al actually said, because I think that what you said about yourself, kind of like that the teenage voice that you hear, that from childhood days, from former jobs, that is actually the core job of agile coaches. This is where we have to step up our game. Because most or many of the problems I see in organizations are people, it's that inner child that got hurt. It sounds like a cliche, but sometimes it's not the child. Sometimes it's just 30 years of a career in a Tayloristic organization and learning to not stick out. And it's okay to react with fear. That instinct reaction that we talked about, it's okay. We are human beings. This is not to be overruled. But the job of a coach, in my opinion, is to work with these people, to reflect on their behavior, see, is that effective what I'm doing? Then to reflect on why am I having these habits, these instinctive reactions? Oh, it comes from, it helped me when I was 16. Okay, or this is the voice of my mother talking in my head. Something like that. And working with that, and that, in my experience, has solved several kind of locks where it looked like it would be an organizational problem, a process problem. But any number of flow metrics didn't solve that. It was because of the people. It was because we have to also meet the leaders as human beings with assuming positive intent and then helping them love themselves, as you said, El. I think this is where we have to step up.
That's something I want to underscore, because I think you're absolutely right. But as a coach, to deal with it, you have to understand human nature. We have to know how we're talking to somebody. And I'm not saying I'm good at this. I know I've created lots of reputations I didn't mean to attend, but we have to, and I'm quite different in workshops myself, but we have to recognize how people are going to react to challenging them on things. So to interact with people in a coaching environment, in the work environment, you have to understand how they're going to react. And, that's something that's not taught. And I know it's taught in some life coaches and, the different coaching workshops and all that. But here's the interesting thing. They're teaching coaching generically. You got these two parties. You got those that are teaching coaching generically, and then those that are teaching process. What you need is how to teach this process. How are they going to react to this? Not this over here and this over there. Talk about not doing systems thinking. That's like remarkable. So this is something I discovered when I left the PMI about 3 years ago. And the first thing I decided to do is I started teaching a little kind of development workshop, at the team, since I'd done any number of these. And I kept getting these questions from people. Al, that's great, but how do we tell that to somebody? Al, that's wonderful, but how can I convey somebody who doesn't get it? And I realized, teaching great ideas is useless if you don't teach how they can convey it to other people. And yet you don't see that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Different people, different ideas to different people is taught in a different path. Like I can talk to engineers one way. I talk to non-engineers a different way. I talk to people in big companies one way and other people a different way. And yet where I go and the concept I want, that may be the same, but the path is different. So you cannot get generic paths and learn how to be an effective coach, in my opinion, with a generic coaching. Now you can get good ideas. I definitely think you can do that. But this fragmentation of things is kind of crazy.
All right.
I would say it's people and ideas, but we've gone too far, Patricia. But you're right. It's people is the focus. How do you get them to understand it?
Yeah. So we got a few minutes. What I would like to do is just maybe get Matthias and Erica to share their final thoughts, and then maybe just quick reactions from if anybody in the audience wants to just quickly react to what we've been discussing. Or provide any thoughts.
I'll go first. I think we talk a lot about people and individuals. And if I just look back at my experience working with companies over the years, I see so much ability in people wanting to try new things, move forward, be open to new ways of working, be open to collaborating, be open to speaking up. I see a lot of potential for people doing that. But I often see them being restricted because other elements of that socio-technical system aren't enabling them to use their voice, their capabilities to the full extent. So I think going back to Maria and the glue walls, and then knowing that we are in complex environments, I would advocate for people who are in agile coaching roles to see how they could also be the glue between all the elements in the socio-technical system, because working with the people and the processes is awesome. But if people are still burdened with 50 dependencies to other teams, and Conway's law is completely messed up, meaning that the software architecture is completely colliding with the enterprise architecture, then people can only do so much. And if leadership is not supportive of them seeking their own solutions and speaking up and experimenting, then also people can be very courageous. But what can you do? You need to make sure that all the elements within the system are enabling people to get the most out of their capabilities. And I think especially with AI, which is now, top of the conversation everywhere, and organizations are looking at it like, oh my God, this is going to be an epic thing, just like they looked at big data and at cloud. Well, I think if they're not starting to prepare themselves to be more adaptive, to trust their people, to let them speak up, to be able to act quickly based upon the new information that the AI might bring to their organization, and be the human factor that makes sure that it's safe and that you can use it, then organizations are, not looking at AI through the glasses that they should be. It's probably the Trojan horse that is standing in front of their door. So if organizations really want to move towards being more adaptable, more effective, more humane, then maybe people in agile coaching roles can be the glue between all the elements in the socio-technical system, which need to be enabled in order to adapt and get the most potential out of the people that they already have in their organizations. And then maybe AI and technology can really play its part.
Hey, that's a really good way to close it. So, Matthias, from your perspective, you're actually the one that has the final say. What do you want to leave us with?
Well, I don't have so much to add. I just would like to kind of try to summarize the theme that we've had so far, which is focusing on humans. That doesn't mean that frameworks are ineffective, that we should get rid of them. No, they are great tools, in my opinion. But they are just that. They are tools. If you want to build a house, you don't obsess over which hammer to pick. Something that doesn't build a house for you. There's something else you need. And so, as Al, I think you said it, we have to combine the things, like it's a socio-technical system. Sorry, it's late. So we focused in the past, many of my colleagues focused too much on the kind of the process, the technicalities and the stuff. That is still important. In fact, I see in many places, I see a lack of what we could call technical excellence, like really focusing on the stuff that makes it work. We still have to be experts. Scrum or SAFe doesn't make us experts in the field. We have to be experts, and that technical expertise I want to see more. But I see most of our work as agile coaches, or not, it's not but, it's an and. We learned that in the first talk. It's an and on the technical side and on the human side. that assuming positive intent, for me, is at the core of what enables so many things, and then enables organizational changes and other things. So assuming positive intent and remembering that leaders, the people above us, are also human beings. They have fears, doubts, they are vulnerable, they don't know the answer. And sometimes, or not sometimes, in most organizations, I see that leaders are treated as superheroes, but in a negative way. It's expected they have the answer. Maybe that ties back to the Peter Senya interview. So we are humans, assume positive intent, even with your boss.
Awesome. Then this is a good segue into your talk. So you got a great intro. So thank you guys for a great discussion. It's always difficult for me, at least I find, to facilitate these discussions because they could go anywhere, and like we don't have a lot of time. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. But
yeah, thank you.
We need a few hours to do this.
Thank you so much for giving us the space to talk.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.